Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you in this room and also in YouTube. It is with great pleasure that, in behalf of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, I welcome everyone to the opening session of the New Heritage Approaches webinar as part of the 2021 debate promoted by our World Heritage Movement. Our World Heritage Movement was launched on November 16, 2020, to promote civil society engagement, strengthen the dialogue and exchange knowledge, creating a strong civil society network and platform in order to contribute to changing strategies for protection and management of the World Heritage Sites. Initially composed of researchers and activists from more than 50 countries, it is constantly expanding by including different voices in monthly thematic events during 2021. This opening session includes a brief presentation of the webinar's context and program and the lectures by three founders of the Our World Heritage Initiative. Now, a description of this session. Daniele Pini and Monica Schlee will present a quick overview of what the New Heritage Approaches team has been discussing in preparing for this global series of meetings promoted and coordinated by the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in collaboration with the University of Bologna, the University of São Paulo, and the New York University in Abu Dhabi. Our team also includes researchers from other institutions in Brazil and abroad, non-governmental organizations and local communities leaders, artists, and heritage conservation professionals, as well as partners from other teams of our World Heritage Initiative, such as the Sustainability and Disaster and Pandemics teams. In the end of this first presentation, Jonathan Scharfman will give more details on the student and youth session that will be held on June 23. After the introductory presentation, Francisco Bandarim will present the Our World Heritage Initiative platform in more detail. Michael Turner will develop the topic Engaging New Heritage Approaches, Disruptive Innovation, followed by George Abungu with the presentation Not for Us Without Us, Heritage is People. Before we start the first presentation, I would like to introduce the main team and thank them very much for all the personal effort and institutional collaboration that made possible this webinar. First of all, my special thanks to Mike Goodcup, who takes care of us on a daily basis. Ana Paula and Amy Wilson, responsible for our site and social media organization. Christina Cameron, who helped with the revision of the session's concept notes. José Landi and staff for the permanent technical support. And Monica Schlee, Daniele Pini, and Jonathan Scharfman, the coordinators of the New Heritage Approaches webinar sessions, including the student and youth session. Monica is a landscape architect and urban planner, lecturer at the Master Program in Design and Heritage of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and co-coordinator of the New Heritage Approaches team of the Our World Heritage Initiative. Daniele Pini is adjunct professor at the University of Bologna in Italy, consultant to local governments and international organizations, and co-coordinator of the New Heritage Approaches team of our World Heritage Initiative. Jonathan Scharfman, responsible for our student webinar, is a maritime archaeologist from South Africa. He's currently working with African Center for Heritage Activities and with the Kira Center for Heritage Studies in developing a research agenda and academic strategy for Africa. Before passing the floor to Monica, to our collaborators and speakers in this session, I would like to thank our Brazilian partners who began building up and sponsoring this webinar since last year. From Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Rafael Winter, from Institute of Geography, coordinator and professor at the graduate program in geography, Rubens de Andrade, from School of Fine Arts and professor at the graduate program in architecture, from University of São Paulo, Flávia Brito do Nascimento, from School of Architecture and Urbanism and professor at a graduate program in architecture and urbanism. A special and necessary word. Our deepest recognition to the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and University of São Paulo, to public Brazilian universities that always support our initiatives and help us overcome all the difficulties that this difficult pandemic period and political moment brought us to Brazil, in Brazil. Now, I'd like to pass the floor to Monica, and Danielle, and Jonathan, and thank you so much for all the understanding and the patience and also the effort you have put on this specific webinar. It's a pleasure to have you here in our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you very much. We are all very happy and excited to welcome everybody to the new Heritage Approach webinar, an incredible series of roundtables that will take place on the next 3 weeks in the framework of our World Heritage Initiative. I will share my screen. And start. This roadmap has been carefully and collectively developed by the entire Our World Heritage team. The first global forum of this movement was launched in November of last year. Also in 2020, the new Heritage Approach team promoted a first master course at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and the Roundtable Africa Brazil, the first of a series of regional dialogues. The year of 2021 is dedicated to 12 thematic forums and several related activities promoted by different partners groups composed with people from various parts of the world. The main global forum will take place in 2022 as part of the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the World Heritage Convention. From 2023 on, the goal is to create a global platform for dialogue and action, including a monitoring system independently managed by the civil society. The entire month of June will be dedicated to debate new heritage approaches from various perspectives. There will be 24 sessions, 3 project exhibitions, and gathering 21 coordinators and 55 speakers. The current context of the World Heritage Conservation shows the extent of the protection efforts of the World Heritage Convention, with 1,121 assets inscribed on the World Heritage List, but also shows a huge imbalance in terms of composition and geographic representation. The large majority of the inscribed assets are cultural sites at the expense of a smaller amount of natural and mainly mixed sites. Europe, North America, Asia, and the Pacific are the regions with more inscribed sites. The graphic to the right shows that the majority of the cultural nominations occurred during the 90s and mainly at the beginning years of the 2000 decade. This timeline shows some of the main conventions, declarations, and international agreements launched since the World Heritage Convention. Prior to this convention, 2 others worth mention. The one concerning armed conflicts of 1954, and the one concerning the prevention of illicit traffic of cultural property in 1970. This broad set of conventions, declarations, agreements, and programs helped to build the conservation politics worldwide. Nevertheless, what did we learn from these experiences? This is this is one of the issues we aim to debate in order to contribute to a more transversal approach among conventions and related documents, thus helping to improve the heritage conservation policy. Right now, as you see, the challenges are many. I will pass the floor to Daniele Pini, who will talk about the challenge we are addressing and the research topics we have debated in order to define the framework of the new heritage approach globally. Danielle?
Danielle, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. It's okay?
Yes, that's fine now.
Okay. So since November 2020, in our discussion, we tried to identify the challenges new approaches have to address. And of course, these are well known in general, but it is important to focus on them. There is the accelerated and unsustainable transformation of living environments, urban and natural, the uncontrolled urban expansion processes, the downgrading of degree of protection, degradation, and elimination of protected areas that are threatened by several different processes, predatory tourism, and in general, the commodification of heritage is a challenge to conservation. Yes, Monica, you go ahead. Monica, Monica, you should go ahead.
Yes, I know, I'm trying.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
No, no, no.
Sorry, Danielle.
No, 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 no. It's you that have to, because I cannot
Yes, sure.
forward the images. But other challenges are, in a sense, quite new, or else are, have a different extent and different even shape in the last few years. For instance, climate change and related extreme effects of floods, hurricanes, and so on. A widespread deterioration of relationship between society and nature, social, environmental, and armed conflicts, and who have as a consequence transnational exodus and expropriations. These are new challenges for heritage protection worldwide, even if they are more evident in some areas of the world, some continents. Ahead. So we try to define a series of objectives to define new heritage approaches that have that are able to face these challenges. The first issue is to inquire why and for whom heritage sites are designated, providing meaningful narratives for the users and to ensure, in order to ensure their preservation. In this framework, gender, ethnicity, race, and income are key aspects of diversity and inequality in the current political context that have to be considered. A second objective of new approaches should be to create living and integrated sites in a territorial and urban landscape perspective, articulating nature and culture, considering the tangible and intangible dimension of heritage, fostering strategies to decolonize the notion of heritage itself, and reinterpreting the values and the attribute through proactive strategies of conservation. In this framework, it is particularly important to overcome the separation, the divide which exists between natural and cultural heritage, but also between the tangible and the intangible heritage. Yes, Monica, ahead. Amongst the objectives and goals, it is important to, it is considered that it is important to involve the local communities and the civil society in the protection and management of heritage, promoting social inclusion and interaction. To this extent, sustainable strategies should aggregate the development of heritage education and social participation as instrument to enhance emancipation, citizenship, democratization, and decision-making processes of the democratization of the decision-making processes. It is important to this effect to integrate the heritage conservation in the territorial and urban planning policies and tools, with a broad participation of the resident population and of the civil society at large. This is absolutely crucial to ensure an appropriate and inclusive heritage management. Yes, ahead. It is important also to consider, in order to define the new approaches to heritage, the digital technologies that in the last few years have gained huge momentum and are part of our life. Even if, as a UN report states, it is very important to remember that public services are becoming more accessible and accountable through blockchain-powered system and less bureaucratically burdensome. However, those yet to be connected remain cut off and remain further behind. So there is a gap in the society, a divide to overcome for those who are unable to access this tool. Engaging digital technologies to extend cultural heritage to the wider public is absolutely a crucial issue in this moment. And using digital application in archaeology and cultural heritage is important and is a very effective tool to present tangible and intangible values. And that can change the approach to heritage. Yes?
Thank you. Thank you, Danielle.
I think you should continue, Monica.
Thank you. I'll do that. Well, these are the main activities that the new Heritage Approach team have been planning and developing collectively as part of the preparations for this Globner. In 2021, they included a second edition of the Regional Dialogue series held in March with the Latin American Roundtable, and a second edition of the New Heritage Approach master course promoted in a joint effort by the University of São Paulo and the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. At this first regional dialogue series, we had the opportunity to address and debate common ground issues and challenges that affect Lusophone and Latin American countries. The contributions complemented each other and pointed to the need to expand the concepts and of landscape and heritage, to discuss the choices of heritage values to be protected, and to incorporate social practice, uses, and collective constructions, recognizing other dimensions of landscape and heritage. The process of debating new heritage approach and preparing the Globner encompassed a series of meetings with our network of conveners and partners, where we collectively identified research topics and subthemes. Discussions in this Globner will address conceptual and methodological issues and approaches to integration, connection, perception, and interpretation, as well as management process. These are the main topics. Those main topics served as a base for structuring the Globner sessions, dedicating one day of the week to each topic. In this way, on Mondays, we will address conceptual subjects, on Tuesdays, methodological issues, on Wednesdays, approach to integration and connection, On Thursdays, approaches related to perceptions and interpretations, and on Fridays, we will address management issues. This is our schedule for this first week. The COVID pandemic has been very difficult and harmful in many ways for us as individuals, as also as a collectivity, especially in Brazil. But thanks to the digital technologies, also brought some opportunities for connection and integration. The World Heritage Initiative and its transnational dialogues is in itself a good example of these opportunities. I think that the main message for today is that together we will, and with an open heart, we can, and also with an open heart to hear what others have to say, we can help to create a better world for all. I wish you a fruitful debate. Thank you very much. Vera, you can pass the floor to Jonathan.
Monica, thank you so much. I will just, if you may, I will have the pleasure and honor to introduce and present our speakers for this session. I'll start. George Ambugu is an archaeologist and former Director General of the National Museums of Kenya. Francisco Badarin is an architect and urban planner specialized in urban conservation from 2000 to 2010. He was director of the UNESCO World Heritage Center from 2010 to 2018. He served as Assistant Director General of UNESCO for Culture. Mike Turner is an architect, the UNESCO shareholder in urban design and conservation studies at Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in Jerusalem and advisor of the World Heritage Center. I will ask to start with George Abungu, since he has a little problem with energy power. So let's hope that he can take, and then after the three guys, Jonathan can also add his presentation about the student and youth globular. Okay, Jonathan? So George, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vera. That is really good of you. Sorry, first of all, let me apologize for the power, but we are in the farm and there's a lot of wind. A few hours ago, we were with the mic. It was okay, but things have changed. I will move ahead with my presentation. I know Francesco was supposed to be first and Mike second. I was supposed to be the last one, but we have to change it. Well, could we have my presentation on the slides on? I would like to move on and say that I chose the topic, not for us, without us. If you do it for me, without me, you are against me. That is a very common word that is used nowadays in this part of the world, especially in Africa, I believe even in southern part of America, South America, and also in Asia, in that people demand to be part of any decisions that are being made, including in the World Heritage issues. And that's why I said World Heritage is about people. Could I have my slides on the screen, please?
Yes, I'm trying, sorry.
Okay. In the meantime, I will continue.
Are you seeing the slides now, George?
No, I'm not seeing anything. I would like to say that the World Heritage that we are dealing with is extremely important. It is important because it's a shared heritage. It's a shared responsibility. And all of us cherish in it. And I believe that all of us are together to promote this very important heritage of humanity that we all share. However, we also have to know that World Heritage Convention that guides this is 50 years old. And 50 years is not a short time. Even in law, you change things. Yes, I can see it, Monica, thank you.
Oh,
and
okay, thank you.
50 years is a long time. Now, those who actually ensured that this convention was enacted, don't move on until I tell you, just go back. Those who actually did this did a noble job and have made sure that the World Heritage has been sustained up to now. But there were people who were of a different environment. There were people who came at a different time. They had their own vision. And so it is also us now to look at what we have and how we can improve it. We have done the same quite often through the World Heritage Committee and the states parties and others. But it is now time to bring in other people. And initiatives like this are extremely important. Now, we do not want to forget that the word community only came in, despite the fact that community is in Article 5 of the convention. Very little of it was actually practiced for many years. And it's not until 2007 in Christchurch in New Zealand that the word community was inserted among the 5 C's that we have in World Heritage. So we need to be able to move on in this world that has been defined by different kinds of activities, including wars, including colonialism. We need to have kind of a mind change set. And so for me, this particular program that has been put, that we are discussing today, on new approaches, is so important because it grounds the community into the center of World Heritage. And I think with Monica and Vera and Daniele, we've been discussing this, and I really appreciate the fact that you always see community at the center. And that's why my topic is not for me without me. Heritage matters. It matters because of the things that you see on the screen there, the national identity, the pride, the sense of place. It helps in conflict resolution. It creates international cooperation. It's an intellectual debate and knowledge generation promoter. It's a way of education and awareness creation. It creates jobs. It creates benefits, industries, environment, conservation. Next, please. And that's why we need people at the center. It's heritage, new heritage approaches must be a heritage that looks first and foremost about people, the people who create and cherish and celebrate it, not moving the people outside and seeing the people as the problem, but the people should be the solution. And I think for us, our World Heritage, that really should be one of the mottos, that the people are at the center of. Next, please. The center of heritage administration and heritage management.
Sorry, I think George, I think his energy just went down.
No, I think I'm there.
Oh, out there? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we have different places. We have like landscapes and places that inspire creativity and our being. You can see some of them that are put in front of you here. Mount Kilimanjaro in the middle, Mosi Atonya in Zambia on the left, the millions of flamingo down there, and you know the smoke that is coming out of Lake Bogoria. All these are World Heritage places. But should we just look at them as natural places, or do they mean something to people? If you ask me, Mosi Atonya is very much closely tied to the people around it. No chief of the people around that area will be made a chief without getting the water from there. It has always been part of it. So nature and culture is intertwined. Mount Kilimanjaro, the people who live in this area, the Moshi area in Tanzania, they know that their God lives up there, the one that provides the rain. And therefore they do everything to protect this mountain. So they have always taken care of it. Even the flamingos at the bottom and the geysers that you see up there are all intertwined with the local people. Next, please. Next. The immense nature that we have. People talk about Serengeti, Masai Mara in Kenya and Tanzania, and they talk about the millions of wildebeest and other animals. But why do we have them? Because the people in these areas have always treated them as part of nature and part of them. The Maasai themselves are very much tied to the animals. They don't kill them. They don't kill them. They don't poach them. They actually see them as their part of their living, and they are related to them. That is why we have inherited this. So when we come to manage these places and we take people aside, we are making a very big mistake. And that's why the people should be part and parcel of this discussion. The word community is absolutely strategic in the discussion of World Heritage and its management. And we need to bring that discussion back by listening to the voices that have not been heard before. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, knowledge systems and practices. It is not until after 2000 that the traditional knowledge systems, those knowledge systems that you found in South America, that you found in North America, that you found in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, that are held by the wise men and the elders, not until after 2000 was this accepted in the World Heritage. The knowledge of the indigenous communities who have managed the forest in the Amazons and other places. Here we have the Kayas in Kenya, managed as World Heritage by these local communities that you see sitting up there. We need to be able to listen to them in the new approaches that is inclusive and understands that there are more than one science, there are many sciences, and that we respect those nurtured heritage, those nurtured knowledge of the past to manage the present. Next, please. The knowledge of creating value, of reviving the old, of making sure that what we see as very old can become part of the present. The knowledge of the masons and the artisans who have created the built architecture of different towns like Lamu, like Zanzibar in Kenya, or in South America, or in North America, or in Europe. That knowledge of that person who has never been to school, but through listening to the elders and practicing has been managed to keep that knowledge. How do we make sure that that knowledge is respected in curriculum, is respected in the management of heritage, and that we can be able to bring youth, young ones, to also be able to get that knowledge and use it for protecting World Heritage. Next, please. Next. So that you can have young people sitting by their elders, listening and practicing, and doing the wonderful work to transform heritage of the past that forms World Heritage into something that we can see that can serve the present community so that they can love it and they can protect it without destroying the authenticity and integrity of the same. Here you can see some of the houses in Lamu World Heritage. They have been transformed from that the way they are, leaving all their authentic and their integrity intact. But even the associated materials like furniture that come with it has to be transferred, that knowledge has to be transferred to the younger generation so that this material can continue to accompany. The songs and the dances, the 2003 convention, we need a World Heritage that also accepts those other conventions that support it, so that the intangible and the tangible can come together, that nature and culture can always be seen as one and the same thing, so that we can be able to have a holistic way of protecting heritage. Next, please. So that we don't end up with dead places, but we end up with creating dynamic and not dead places, places like Zanzibar that are dynamic. So someone is roasting maize on the road, another person on the beach, ladies are walking, going for ceremonies. This is the type of heritage that you need, not the heritage that looks at community as intruders, as their expectations are always conflicting with World Heritage. That those indigenous knowledge systems can be part and parcel of the heritage management. The last slide, please. Capacity building should be part of it. And capacity building in terms of new approaches should include not only going to the universities and colleges and World Heritage practices that take to the present, but that also borrows from the traditional knowledge systems, like the knowledge systems of those people in Mali that you see on the left-hand side photo of Askia Muhammad's tomb. That is a World Heritage. Repairing this every 2 years because it's made of earth and wood and it will deteriorate. But for hundreds of years, this has been done to keep it going. That we need to recognize those efforts that have been done before. That we have to mix the present, the modern, and the past to be able to develop management systems that are able to meet the present day. And capacity building at all levels is crucial because there are many sciences and many sciences at all levels rather than just one science made in Europe, which has always been seen as the center. So we have to start in new approaches to go to the periphery, to go to the Amazon, to go to the different forests in Borneo and other places to learn what these knowledge systems are that we can be able to incorporate into our management systems. Because it is only through that way that we'll be holistically taking care of the heritage. I think I will leave it at that. And if there is more discussion, maybe we can take it over from there. Thank you very much, Vera. Thank you, Danielle, and thank you, Monica, for giving me this time. And all the best. If I switch off, you know I'm with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George. Thank you so much. And it was perfect talk. And I'm just happy that you could talk to us. And it's an important message and an important presentation that you made. I just pass the floor to the screen to Francesco and then Daniele to make their talks. And after, Jonathan will present the student and youth. Okay?
Good. So it's for me, Vera?
Yes, it's for you,
Thank you very
Francesco.
much. Well, thank you very much. Good morning to an afternoon to all of you. I would like first of all to thank you, Vera and Monica, because you've done a gigantic effort in the past months. We know that because we were part of it. And now we have generated another big mega event, which is the 24 sessions of the months on new heritage approaches. I'm very happy for this, and I really congratulate you. I know how much it's difficult to do all these things. So thanks again on behalf of all of us. I'm going to be very short. First of all, because I think George has said it all. I think he has presented the entire picture from the beginning to the end, and his words really represent what our world heritage is and wants to be. Perhaps all I can do is to somehow summarize how, for those who are not aware yet of what our heritage is meant to achieve, why we came about, when we came about, what are the current developments of our organization, how we think we can play a role in the future in the important decision-making processes of the World Heritage Convention, but even beyond that, in relationship to the public, to the citizens, to what we call civil society. I think it's this term that was very much at the center of George's commentaries. Civil society, which is a very broad definition. I agree, it's not very simple. It involves and includes many aspects of many types of participation. But civil society is it's not been given in the convention a proper role. And this, I think, is the very reason why our World Heritage was born. Of course, you read the convention, you read the operational guidelines, you see the term of communities it appears, but in reality it's not in the spirit in which the convention is managed. Convention was written 40, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, at that time, perhaps you could still have an international treaty which was completely top down. It was coming from the member states, from the experts, from the association of the experts, and so on, towards civil society, which was seen as a kind of beneficiary of somebody some group that could benefit from it. That's exactly the term that is used in the convention. Well, the world has changed. Sorry, it's changed. Civil society doesn't want to just be a passive, component of the convention and the heritage preservation in general. as proven by other UNESCO conventions. You probably are aware that there are many others, and some of them, like for instance, the Intangible Heritage Convention or the Convention for the Protection of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, put civil society at the very center of their activity. So, we are somehow a little bit even surprised that this has not come to somehow influence more the World Heritage Convention. There's been a lot of talk. We know that it's very difficult to change the convention. It takes a long time. A lot of talk, a lot of moments in which the convention has adhered to projects and ideas that come also from the United Nations, like the Sustainable Development Goals, sustainability, etc. But in reality, at the moment, civil society is just, I would call it a lip service of the convention. They give it 2 minutes, the floor for 2 minutes at the beginning, and while all the ambassadors and the delegates do something else, somebody gives a short speech, and then if everybody is forgotten. So this is not exactly how we intended the role of civil society. We want to therefore give more role, power, and vision to civil society, essentially creating a platform where very different groups around the world can multiply their effort. We in our platform, there are a lot of people with expertise, experience, long years of commitment and work with the convention, so we can really be effective, and we can become a multiplier. We can become stronger. We can become a global network, which we already are in a way, fighting things that we think are wrong in the convention. First of all, the little consideration for the role of communities and civil society. Then what we call politicization. Politicization is, in our term, is not the use of the convention for political purposes by member states, like I don't know, whatever. No, it's the fact that member states essentially use the convention to exchange favors, on nomination, state of conservation. You can see it, this has been also documented, books and everything. You can see it every time there is a committee, a kind of a marketplace takes place, which, okay, I support your site in exchange for you supporting my site, or, and whenever a state doesn't want a site to be discussed, it's not discussed because nobody proposes it. So we don't want that. This is really the worst way of interpreting the spirit of the convention. We want to fight that thing and impose that, if there is a site that has problems, it is discussed, whether the state likes it or not. I think there are many things that we carry along this discussion, and of course the 12 months of debate that we have organized show that there is an immense need of reform, changing, updating, upgrading the processes of the convention. If you look at the 12 months and the 12 themes that we have put up front, many of them are very, very sensitive, very difficult, and probably will never be discussed by the convention unless we create the movement that forces member states and all the actors of the convention, which is not just the member states, also the UNESCO Secretariat, the World Heritage Center, the advisory bodies, etc., all the systems that is working on the convention, to really put these themes up front and make a very serious discussion, a very serious upgrading and updating of the convention's mechanisms, and so to include those. I think it's not difficult, it's not easy, but we'll try to do it. And of course, we will speak to everybody. We want to collaborate with everybody. This movement, this platform that we want to build our heritage, has been defined from the beginning as constructive and critical. We want to collaborate with UNESCO, want to collaborate with advisory bodies and member states that are willing to support heritage conservation. But we want to be free to be critical. And if there is a problem, an issue that is not properly addressed, we want to be free to say it and to have as much as possible, echoes in the media, and talk to the media and be able to somehow influence and make pressures on the member states. So we see ourselves as both collaborative and critical, and this is not an easy task, not an easy way to work on, because sometimes it's a fine line between the two, but we would like to have this spirit in our mind. Now, in the past year, we have organized this complex and rich system of debates, 12 months, as I said. I think well, I don't have full number, but I think that there are at least 500, 600 people working on these things around the world, and we have already some 3,000 members, people that subscribe our newsletter and so on. The foundation with the name of Our Heritage was created just a month ago, and so we exist. Of course, we operate a very limited budget at the moment, but we do exist, and we intend to make it even more say stronger and stronger in the coming months and years. So there is a big debate in our bodies, which are essentially a board and an advisory committee, on what to do next year when the 50th anniversary of the convention will be celebrated. I think it will be an important moment in which we will be able to present a reform platform to the community, to the people first, and then also to the member states. This reform, addresses very critical issues that are the ones that are being discussed today. There are many situations also. I think George was showing us a lot of cases. There are many situations that need to be addressed. I would like to show you very quickly, if I have 2 minutes, one case which I think was at the very beginning of our reflection on the creation of our heritage. And of course, you certainly know it because it's a very famous case, and it just happens to be also my own city, which is the case of Venice. Now, why do I put this up front? Because today, if you look at every newspaper in the world, they report that there is a big scandal in the city. The city is inside, as you know, inside the lagoon, very fragile, very difficult to manage. And inside this lagoon, this enormous ships come in. These are the mega ships, 100,000 tons that carry thousands of tourists around the world. Look at this picture. Look at the size of this ship compared to the size of the city. So clearly there is a problem. This problem has been dragged on and on and on for many times, in spite of accidents that took place, where there were even accidents in this ship that crashed into the decks. And in Istanbul, the committee, 2016, discussed the case. I remember that I was there on the podium, sitting on the podium, and at that time, everybody, it was a long discussion, because everybody wants to, when it's in public, wants to say, we want to protect Venice as a symbol of heritage around the world. So there were a number of recommendations that were made. Well, when it came to discussing this recommendation in Baku in 2019, the committee didn't even open the site for discussion. And the standard discussion that was presented by the Center of the Advisory Body was full of mistakes. Something that I even tried to say, listen, why do you propose something that is so wrong? So now this year, 2 years after, we have an interesting opportunity, because just a month ago, the Italian government passed a law which became made news around the world, saying, okay, big ships out of the Venice Lagoon. Okay, and big ships out of the Venice Lagoon is because ships, as you see, are going through this area, which is just in front of the great San Marco Square and so on. So they were proposing other solutions. Well, yesterday, a mega came in. So all the papers of the world are saying, what is happening? I mean, the Italian government gets all the applause of the world's community for taking the ships off. And now look at that. So as you see, there is a lot of protest going on around the city right now. This is civil society operating. And of course, the little ships around the big ship symbolize this Goliath and David fight. But it's certainly, there is an issue, because what the Italian government has promised has not been fulfilled. And it will never be fulfilled the way in which the law that has been approved by the government and parliament has been adopted, because it's a law that essentially creates, with a number of delays and postponements and alternatives and so on, creates a situation by which this situation will continue forever. So I hope that this discussion will take place this year at the committee, although the committee will be organized in a virtual way, because it will be a matter of credibility. And of course, the pressure of civil society that, as you see, has been able to fill the first pages of every single paper in the world on this issue, will actually force the committee to take stock of the situation and really do what they can do, put Venice in the danger list as it deserves at the moment. Okay, just to give you, it was an example, but so you can see that we can be at the same time a group of people that open up discussions and platforms, but we also need to be people that are able to activate a movement and support movements that are in favor of heritage preservation. So these are the two souls, the two aspects of our association. I would like to thank you very much, Monica and Vera, and pass back the floor to you. Thank you.
Vera?
Vera it caiu.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I will pass the floor to Mike Turner and thank very much Francesco for this very thought-provoking message and talk that he brings to us. Thank you very much. And Mike, please, it's your turn. Mike, please, you have to unmute.
Sorry. So thank you very much. And I just joined the support, the congratulations which everybody has given to the team. And I apologize if I flake out because the internet here is somewhat unstable. So just bear with me. Anyway, we're talking about new heritage approaches. And the issue really is it revolution or evolution? And this is what Francesco spoke about, to be sort of like critical. We're looking at new heritage approaches, and I want to speak about disruptive innovation. I think that what we have to put it into context is that over the years, we've had a series of revolutions, a scientific revolution which has taken place in the times of the 16th and 17th centuries, industrial revolutions which have taken place at different times at different parts of the world, but focused around the 18th century, social revolutions which were a result of the industrial revolutions, and then developments and commercial revolutions, and in 1972, an environmental revolution, and finally a digital revolution, which I give it in 1989 as the WWW. So we can see that between these revolutions, we actually get a group of people called the Futurists, some 100 years ago. And they spoke about speed. It emphasized speed, technology, youth, violence, objects such as the car, the aeroplane, the industrial city. But they never even dreamt of the sort of speed that we're dealing with 100 years later. So we're now looking at the digital revolution. Now, why is it so important? Because technologies are rapidly shifting from centralized hierarchies to distributed networks. And what it now does, it empowers individuals rather than external hierarchies. We saw this with the Arab Spring. The final effect is not relevant. The fact that change took place, whether it is good or bad, whether it was whatever, but there was the digital revolution, which then moved the center of gravity from the institution, from top down, to the power which individuals could then develop. And to express this speed, I'm just going to say just something that in fact it is exponential growth. It is the data versus knowledge, it's information versus wisdom, and it is this disruptive innovation. In 1990, the Encyclopedia Britannica sold the most editions ever since it started in 1768. Just 10 years later, started Wikipedia. And just 10 years after that was the last printed edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica. And that is the speed of change which we're looking at. But we have to be very careful about understanding the speed of change in heritage, because I change my clothes each evening, the interiors I might change each season, the neighborhoods I might change as I go along, whereas my cities I change very, very short. So what we have to do is to understand there is a dissonance between the change and exactly how we can then manage new heritage approaches. So the idea was of innovation research started in 1903 by a researcher called Gabriel Tard. And he first came up with this idea of the S-curve, the diffusion curve defining innovation decision processes. And he spoke at different steps. The first step is the early stage, of which growth is relatively slow. And then the customers begin to demand, and then it goes up. And then it reaches the end of the life cycle. And then he mentions that in later stages, no amount of new investment in that product will yield a normal rate of return. In other words, new heritage approaches cannot build on the existing. It must create a new pattern. We cannot simply tinker with the past. Stafford Beer, who was the main person dealing with cybernetics, and in fact was invited by Allende to generate how cybernetics could manage the government of Chile, he spoke about then the idea of the S-curve again, looking at different changes, which man's capacity to travel at speed, which I related just before to the Futurists. And he writes over here that when the technology reaches its level, even successful technologies considered in relation to competitive technologies may cease to be economic any longer. When these systems appear, there's only one remedy. It is fruitless to imagine that extra effort, extra capital can resurrect the moribund organism. A decision must be made to superimpose a new growth curve upon the old. In the case of technology, this means embarking on fresh research. So we have to begin to realize that if we want something new heritage approaches, we have to sort of use revolution. So it might be a bit of a problem. We have to then look at it carefully. I think if you want a really good presentation, not that I agree with a lot of his politics, was Thomas Friedman at the United Nations Economic and Social Council. He gave a superb presentation about changing political economy of globalization. And he spoke again about what he called was the hockey stick, about this point of moving along. And at this point is that he's looked at the differences, and at 2007. And he looked at again exactly how, in fact, our lives are changing. And I'm just giving over here exactly how new technologies affect our change about energy and using clean energy, or in fact using Amazon and marketing and retailing. And he said, we have a new language. We don't have friends anymore. We have Facebook. We don't have opinions. We have Twitter. We don't have ideas or messages. We have WhatsApp and WeChat. We don't have education. We have Khan Academy. We don't have searches. We have Google. So anyway, he began to look at that. And 2007 was a dramatic change. Now, he spoke about Kindle. He spoke about Airbnb. He spoke about Moore's law, where in fact all these things change exponentially. But I also add that in 2007 was the time that United Nations told us that in fact more people are living in cities than outside the city. But new heritage approaches need to understand that culture changes. We have to, in fact, we have to confront the issue of outstanding universal value. There's no such thing, perhaps, in many, many cases, because values change. There's value conversion, where we have a different approach to slavery. There's value creation. Our whole ideas of environment were not around at the time of just 1972. And then we also have value connections, new serial nominations and ideas. So we have to recognize the fact that everything is on the move, and in fact, it's a moving target. And to explain this in a more dramatic way is that we have this idea of sustainable development. and which it looks about compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It contains within it two key concepts. Well, Mrs. Brundtland spoke about the issues of next generations, but in fact, this is real problem. Because in fact, if we look at David Reed, he questions whether it is meaningful to talk of sustainable development when we have no certainty of the needs of future generation. Let us say that we started to approach what they knew in 1987 and 1989 with the Brundtland report about the new generation of the needs when we have a digital revolution. It makes complete nonsense about it, how close we may be to such conditions. He implies that we need to consider whether this is an imprecise idealism unchecked by reality. And I suggest we take some serious concern about what he said. So we're talking about World Heritage Cities under change, and look at the change which takes place. How can we imagine that one generation could look at this and then realize that this could take place? So it questions very much that we should not take the issue of future generations too seriously, but we should take in consideration that of needs of different people. But managing change is not development like we can see in Shanghai, but it is also which doubled its population, but it's also places which in fact are reducing, that in fact Liverpool reduced its population by half. So it is managing the change as opposed to protecting the monument. And this brings us on to disruptive innovation. So when we have innovation, the classic example is that of the car and the Ford T, which then took over the streets. So in 1900, there were no cars at all. By 1913, there were no hose carts. Just think about the streets of New York with the pollution of the horse shit, as they say, and also of the air pollution from the cars. So there's an environmental issue of disruptive innovation. Who won? With the first cars, it didn't. It was only when the Model T took place that in fact mass-produced automobile, that was disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovations tend to be produced by outsiders and entrepreneurs in startups rather than existing market-leading companies. In other words, we have to have our world heritage as outside the system to be able to create a disruptive process. Can take a little longer to develop it by conventional approach, but when it happens, it makes change, and then it is new heritage approaches. So let's look then at where, in fact, the Model T left us. The Model T was, in fact, a new ideas of transportation. The new urban agenda says that we should improve the transport and mobility. We should then have safe, sufficient, adequate pedestrian cycling infrastructure and technology-based innovations. But these are texts, these are words. But we have to then begin to understand that changes in mobility, which COVID-19 has challenged us, that mobility does not mean to four wheels. It means something which is then the flow of information of mobility and its access by individuals as opposed to bureaucracies. And just look how we have relics of heritage, which we then have to deal with in disruptive innovation. We can see exactly what's left over and the shipwrecks of time, as Francis Bacon would have it. But in fact, people can affect change. Look what the people of Seoul did. They took the large-scale activities of the motorways leading up, and that was enough. Just look what happened. They got rid of the cars, and it's now a pedestrian movement. That is a whole new way of looking at freeways. And also, if we were to look then at the Big Dig in Boston, or we could look at the driverless cars, which we have then, we don't need any road signs anymore. And petrol stations, they are just simply old-fashioned. we have new technologies which might change exactly how we manage then our areas. So to the end of it, that we have to begin to understand that there are complicated and they're complex ways of thinking. A complicated device can be easily managed. We can predict with relative certainty what was going to take place. Complexities as our cities, as our heritage, is extremely difficult. And in fact, it quickly becomes unpredictable. But that's why we in the research structures will always have something to research about. So we are absolutely pleased about it. But that really leaves us with then something for the future. The new heritage approaches is really to take on board the city of tomorrow, which Le Corbusier leaves with us, left blank for a worth expressing modern feeling. And this is where the challenge we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for this very interesting and also very thought-provoking talk. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I don't know if, Vera, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just, my internet also went away and now came back. I just asked Jonathan to present, to talk a little bit about our student and youth session. And please, Jonathan. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you to all of the speakers so far. And I think George, Francesco, and Mike have said an enormous amount about new approaches and what it is that we're doing here. And I found that quite inspiring. And I think perhaps instead of me just going through what it is that the students will do, if you will indulge me in a personal kind of anecdote about heritage and new heritage approaches. It occurred to me this morning while I was driving to come here that it's maybe not my place as a 50-year-old to talk about new approaches in the context of students and how they see the world and how they see heritage developing. So I was thinking back to when I was a student, and I happened to be driving past the University of Cape Town, which is where I did my undergraduate and master's studies, and which was recently suffered quite a lot of damage through a mountain fire that spread onto the campus and burned down several of the buildings, including the African Studies Library. And I was driving past and looking up to see if I could see any of the damage, to see what had been done to repair it, and missed it, but saw the building that contained the archaeology department where I'd studied. And I was thinking back to my own experiences of studying heritage and thinking about these kind of concepts of what heritage means and what world heritage means. And I remember as a master's student tutoring students in the archaeology department, and as always, the archaeology students ask, what's the point of archaeology? Why do we do this? And giving my standard reply that I'd been told when I was a student, that it's important for us to study the past because it's the context for the present and it guides us into the future. And all of that, of course, is true. But a little later that day, I remember standing on the roof of the archaeology department, and maybe just to give you some context, the University of Cape Town is up on a mountain, and it overlooks the city and the suburbs of Cape Town. Behind it is the peninsula that goes into the southwestern tip of Africa. And it's a spectacular view over Cape Town and the surrounding areas. And I was standing up there looking at that city and looking at that landscape and trying to identify the elements within that landscape that made up the heritage of that city. And to the east of the university, there's False Bay, which is a body of water which is warmed by the Indian Ocean currents that come down the east coast of Africa. And beyond that is the Indian Ocean itself and everything that goes with that Indian Ocean world of the Silk Road and the spice routes. The Indian Ocean world where the seeds of globalization were planted thousands of years ago. To the west, you can look over and see Table Bay, which is on the Atlantic Ocean, And beyond that, of course, is that idea of European expansion and colonialism, and that European trade that changed the world. And beyond the Atlantic Ocean, the Americas, and the great civilizations of the Americas, and those ideas of slavery, and all of those issues that make up this global heritage. And if you look north from the university, there's the entire African continent lies in front of you. And those landscapes that George pointed out, those deserts and jungles and savannas that exist there. And up north, those North African civilizations, the pyramids in Egypt, the Mediterranean world, and Europe beyond that. And then behind me, to the south, is this confluence of ocean and land, where all of that history comes together, where those great historical narratives and those historical forces all meet in one place. And I remember standing there looking at all of this and thinking that I was at the center of the world, that everything was happening around me, and everything happened where I was. But at the same time, realizing that for billions of people elsewhere in the world, there's that same sense of place, that same sense of history that they get, and all of us get, as we look at the landscapes around us and as we look at the heritage around us. And the importance of our heritage is not just that it's the past informing us about the present and guiding us in the future. It's about who we are, and it's about how we see the world and how the world has evolved. And in terms of something like world heritage, those are really those things that we share. Those are those global narratives. That's the universality of heritage, and it's everywhere. It's not just in the World Heritage sites that we see around us. And I hope that kind of ethos, that thinking, was what guided me as I went into my career as an archaeologist and a heritage manager and a researcher. But then again, as I drove past the university this morning and looking up at those buildings and thinking about that damage and thinking back to when it happened, when that fire swept through the university campus and damaged a lot of buildings, there was this outpouring of grief and this outpouring of money to repair those things. But all of it was focused on that library. People weren't that concerned about the other buildings that had burnt down, but people were really concerned about the library and what that meant and what that contained. And again, it occurred to me that wasn't about those buildings. It was about what that library contained, about those books and about what those books contained. And it didn't matter really that those books, if they'd burnt, many of them had been digitized. We wouldn't have lost that much information, but we would have lost that tangible and intangible heritage, that intangible link to the past that was represented by those books. And again, I was thinking about that in the context of world heritage, and this idea that even people who didn't have a connection to the University of Cape Town had this sense of loss and this sense of heritage being important. And it didn't matter who you were or where you were. That really resonated with people and was significant for people. And then in the context of that, thinking about what it means for world heritage, what it means in terms of the month of work that we're going to do here. We've always tended to think, as has been pointed out, we tend to think of heritage as these monuments to the past, these buildings, these objects, these things that we can see and touch. But there's so much more to it than that. And the discussion around what's happening with the World Heritage Convention, how it's being used, and what it's become in the last 50 years, and how we have the opportunity with its 50th anniversary to change the way that we perceive that and to change the way that we use the World Heritage Convention. I think it's important that this new heritage approach is at the center of that. Changing the way we approach, the way we look at heritage, the way we record heritage, and the way we understand heritage is central to this entire theme and to the future of this convention. So with that in mind, there's a number of sessions that will happen in the course of this month. And the ones that I'm directly involved with, I can talk about. Of course, we're looking at sessions that involve using that cross-convention approach to understand heritage better, to get a deeper understanding of those World Heritage sites, to understand that there's a number of heritage elements that are not part of that World Heritage Site, but that make up what that World Heritage Site is and what it means. We talk about decolonization of heritage and what that means in terms of finding those missing or marginalized or ignored narratives that George was talking about. That's a civil society voice that makes World Heritage universal. And of course, the student forum and the student Globinar. And I think, again, that is central in this theme and is central in the future of this initiative, because these are the people who will record those voices and who will really implement those new approaches. As a 50-year-old, what I consider new approaches are no longer new. The world is changing rapidly, as Mike has just pointed out. And those young voices, those young professionals, those people that will see the world, that will stand on top of those buildings and look out at those heritage landscapes, it's important for us to understand what it is that they're thinking and to give them the space and the voice to implement those new approaches in a way that is relevant and truly significant. So I would encourage you, all of you here, to attend those sessions, and not just as observers, but as protagonists. And all of the sessions this month, as it says in the title, this is our World Heritage, and I would really like to. Well, I hope that there's a dynamic and a vibrant debate, both from the experts and from those young voices and from civil society, that really makes sure that in joining these debates, that this is our World Heritage, and it's up to all of us and to all of the participants in those sessions to make that so. So, just to finish off, I see it was mentioned in the chat. I encourage you also to visit the ourworldheritage.org site and to have a look at those sessions and to really participate. Not just be listeners, not just to be passive in this process. This is our World Heritage, and we should make it so. And with that, I'll hand back to Vera.
Lovely.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and also to giving us some of our speakers gave us a lot of inspiration, and also the energy and the will to follow the sessions, to enter the sessions, to debate with many people, collaborators and speakers that will be with us. I'm not sure if you have questions. I think I'm not seeing here in Zoom. We have a comment from Umberto Bonomo that I'm just willing to read for you. And thank you, Umberto, for being with us and also for helping us. Umberto point out here in Zoom, we are living in heritage revolution in terms of resignification of monuments, decolonization process, and empowering of people, construction and creation of new values. I think that's a good message and a good resume of what we are here doing and trying to debate. I think that we have so many good issues to comment, but I'm just asking Monica to see if she wants to complete or to see any other comment.
Okay, thank you, Vera. I just want to express how grateful I am for all those very inspiring talks of George, Francisco, and Mike that brought to us important message concerning different issues. I would like to highlight some that the people have to be part of the World Heritage Movement, and that we are now facing and dealing with a convention of with a 50-year convention. So we have to bring new people into this debate and spread the word that heritage matters and that people must be the center of heritage management. As George told us not only after 2000, knowledge systems and practice were accepted by the World Heritage. We had to listen to these people for new approaches to heritage. And recognizing, we also should recognize the value of elderly and also of the young and also the indigenous people to create a dynamic place, to create dynamic places. Capacity building must also be a part of it, bringing local knowledge together with academic knowledge, embrace the periphery and learn from indigenous knowledge. Francesco points out how the term civil society was at the center of George's presentations, and emphasized again that the convention was written 50 years ago and are already in process of change. And he told us that we should embrace the raw power of civil society, creating a platform for multiple groups to share their knowledge and to provide the civil society the ways to be a multiplier of those important messages. Going beyond the choice by the state to choose which side should be protected. So this is an important thing that we are now discussing and debating how to this movement can add and can help to really make a change on these political aspects. And also Francesco brought a very important case, the case of Venice, that it is very urgent to be discussed. And Michael Turner, Mike, pointed for us the disruptive innovations that we are now dealing with, and also pointed out the several scientific, industrial, social, commercial, environmental, and digital revolutions that we face, that the humankind face. And that in all those revolutions, we had the group of futurists who could see further. Currently, we are in the digital revolution, which empowers individuals as well as different visions to be shared. Mike presents the exponential growth of the rise in innovations, which he believes must be linked to new notions of world heritage. And he brought also that these new technologies change our perspective and bring new languages to change the social experience. He also emphasized the importance of the new urban agenda and stressed the complicated issues that we are facing now to really adapt and to move on with a better future and a better way of improving the convention and also the conservation politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you all. I think we don't have by now questions.
I think that there is a question here. How I will read it.
Okay. I just cannot see in the Zoom. See, please. Question,
okay.
And then we can.
How to awaken the interest of new generations to preserve cultural heritage? This is a question for you three. Okay.
Mike, Danielle, and George. I don't know if George is still here, but Mark, Danielle, and Jonathan, you can just answer.
And Francisco.
I would personally defer to Jonathan. I think that the way is that if I look at the heritage of today, the architecture of today is the heritage of tomorrow. Rather than seeing that it is a relevance of the past, it is essentially belongs to the present, which is the current generations. And I think that by strengthening the responsibility of what we do now, will then also reflect on values of the past.
Yes.
Can I say?
Yes, go ahead, please, Jonathan.
No, just I think you know, I will defer to Michael, which is the younger generation to me. But I think the example I showed is quite good for answering the question, because you know most of the people there are young people, and why are young people mobilized? Because you know at some point they recognize, they understand, they touch with their hands that you know protecting heritage is a you know a way to ensure a better future for them, for their families, for themselves. So I think this is the critical thing: how to make heritage closer to the younger people. It's just you know showing them that their future is hinged on you know a better preservation of cultural and natural heritage, and that they can play a big role on that. Of course, if heritage is just for tourists, or just for experts, or just for somebody else, you know, they will not see it as part of their lives. So I think we have to break this system that has, in a way, commercialized, separated, commercialized, and industrialized sometimes heritage as part of, you know, just an economy of a tourist economy or other types of economies. But we have to make it again be part of the life of the community in the larger sense possible. Thank you.
Yes, if I may add something, I think this is the real issue. I think that we have to overcome a view of heritage as simply as a tourist attraction. In my experience, I see that, for instance, there is a larger participation of young people in some heritage association that deals with the local story, that deals with the local culture, that deals with the local. It's a way of looking for the roots. And to this point of view, for instance, there are some initiatives which are very successful and attract very much young people. Not the majority, for sure. The majority prefer to go to the discotheque, but there is a considerable amount of people who takes care, for instance, of some minor heritage feature in their city or in their territory. They have an active approach to their conservation and presentation. So I'm not so pessimistic about that, at least if I look to Italy and my region, for instance. So it is important what Francesca said. We don't have to think that heritage is important only as a tourist attraction. But heritage is important because it shows us our roots. They increase our sense of belonging to the place, and that's what attracts young people. This is my experience, at least.
Danielle, I don't know if Jonathan wants to complement.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. I think opening up the space, and what's so important about this initiative is opening up that space to allow those young voices and young people to get involved in heritage is important. I know in my experience as a heritage manager that it was very much us going out and telling people what we thought they should find important, and shifting that to tell us what you think is important gives people access to it. And as soon as people have access to it, then it becomes something that they take ownership of, I think, and gives them a position to really engage with that heritage. And I think for us, in the long run, as heritage managers, we can only benefit from that.
Thank you, Jonathan. I will pass to Maria because there is some questions that are arriving now, so she will read. Maria, can you read the questions, or do you prefer? Thank you.
Just an observation. I just close. We're closing the questions right now, since we have another session starting at 1 p.m. UTC.
Oh, yeah.
So that we will have time for the brief responses for these questions. Then we'll close the session. Okay, Monica?
Okay, no problem. So we will send.
We have one other one.
Yes.
We have one in Zoom. How many?
Two. We have two more questions, but I don't know if we can send the questions to our guests, and then they can.
Maybe if you have a quiz, if they want everyone that wants to respond, anyone that wants to respond to that, I will just make the question in Zoom. Okay, Monica? And then if there's some in YouTube also, but we're closing now the questions.
Okay.
In a context, well, there's a question coming from Tayana Figueiredo. In a context of disruptive changes, how the World Heritage can leave the key of built heritage and incorporate the approach of cultural landscapes. It's up to you guys if you want to.
Well, I can say that if you follow this month's discussions, you will have an answer, because that's exactly at the center of the New Heritage Approaches program. In the past 20, 30 years, there's been a big evolution, a big change in the approach to heritage, and we know that, and we will reassess it in our discussions. And these changes have somehow brought us to an heritage concept that is farther away from the monumental view that came from the 19th century and so on, and closer to more integrated cultural nature approach that is perhaps not yet established or formally recognized, but certainly coming. So I think we are in the middle of a transition. Perhaps there's always been a transition in heritage. It's never been a very stable concept, but certainly we are very much interested in this. In promoting this transition. By the way, as you remember, the recommendation of UNESCO of 2011, the historical landscape is very much on that direction. So there are many signs and many evidence that things are changing in that direction. But again, it's not we have to do it. It's not something that comes by itself. Thank you.
I think I'd just like to add to that. Francesco made a note of the 2011 historic urban landscape. I think that what it did, it defined the issues of heritage as beyond the historic center or ensemble, to include both the tangible and intangible elements in the space around it. In other words, it was always, I think, the critical word, and I'm beginning to sort of like think about it after a decade of application, that the word beyond is so important. And I think that it is beyond ourselves, of which we bring things on. It's beyond the city to engage with the urban and rural. It is beyond limits or narrow interests, but to go to the public. So I think that this is a really critical aspect. And I think that beyond also goes, it's not to think outside the box, but to change the shape of the box. And I see that therefore the actual beyond actually then redefines the spaces by which we can then look at heritage, as Francesco said, beyond the monument.
I think we have another question. I don't know if you're free to answer. Is heritage dynamic, and is heritage dynamic, and if so, then why do we refer to past heritage and modern heritage? Who can answer?
I think it's essentially chronological distinction. Modern heritage is something maybe from the Industrial Revolution on, mostly 20th century. That's how we interpret that, and historic heritage comes before. But of course, we need to be more precise. There are very many manifestations of heritage. But chronology is certainly an important distinction, because that gives you a time span to be analyzed, and also you realize each one has different ways of being dealt with. Way in which you deal with modern heritage is different from prehistory, for instance, as we will see during the months of discussion on new heritage approaches. So I'd like just to invite everybody to follow up.
I'd just like to add, we're having, Jonathan will recall, is that we're now having a debate on the modern heritage of Africa. Because modern heritage is an activity at UNESCO. It relates also specifically to particular characteristics in the on the World Heritage List, and we are challenging this. I think the comment by Umberto regarding decolonization then questions exactly what it is. So one of the things said is that it's not the modern heritage in Africa, it's modern heritage of Africa. And therefore the word heritage is therefore essentially a comprehensive understanding about the integrative aspects which we're actually talking about. But also it challenges the idea that the word modern relates to time. It relates essentially to place, and therefore essentially to ideas. So therefore, I think that one of the things which new heritage approaches should really be looking at the redefining exactly this this question. I think the question should be now asked, as Francesco said, at every session over the next month, to exactly how to challenge this.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. Some new comments. This session is being also on YouTube, broadcasting YouTube, so it will be recorded and be available in YouTube channel, so that you can everyone can just listen to after that. And also some people that couldn't be here, but they will be they can just watch the session YouTube. So it's a very good way to include everyone, and it's a very good thing. And also some new, well, I just want to thank you so much, Francesco Bandering, also Michael Turner, and also Giorgio Abungu, Daniele Pini, Jonathan Scharfman, and Monica, who were here with us, and also Rafael and Rubens and Flavia and our Brazilian team that was here also to help us also to include. I would like to thank you, and Rubens, who is there, over there. And I would like to thank you, everyone is in YouTube audience, they are also here in Zoom audience. Very good questions, very good answers. We are moved on questions. I mean, the questions help us think about the issues that we have to face. So thank you for people that send the questions, and also the answers. And that's nice, because the debate then will be recorded. So then you can all also watch the debates. And well, I would like to thank you again, Landy and the team of Hexagonon that are helping us streaming the Zoom and also YouTube. And then Carolina Soares and Larissa Lima, who are preparing the reports on the sessions. It's very, very important to have the reports. And Mike, and also Ana Paula and Amy, and so many people that just helped us being here. A special thank to Rafael Winter from Geography Department that's sponsoring this transmission. Also, it's very good to have you with us, Rafael, and also having your program in geography helping us to deliver that session and also deliver the Globular as a whole. Well, I'd like to also thank everyone that are here with us, but remember that we have another session, the session 1 that will start in some minutes. And please, reimporting the balance between local and universal values will begin. And so I will just repeat here the next session link. So people just can hope to be with us, have a quick break and be with us in some minutes. And also visit our site, because then in the site, you have all the sessions, all the links, all the explanations, concept notes. So that you can follow in our site. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And again, to our colleagues and collaborators and friends and panelists and audience, and attendees and participants that could have this opening session a brightful and also so meaningful session for us. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in